Once again, we want to welcome you all to our webinar workshop this beautiful Friday morning. We appreciate you waking up and spending just a small part of your day with us. My name is Brian Griffin, a marketing assistant here at Messer Financial Group. And if you are on this call, you already know who Messer is. So today, we'll be talking about Office in a Box, aka Kynect. We'll also be talking about virtual enrollments and updates to scope of appointment. My MFG is constantly improving and evolving, and we want to make sure that you're being kept in the loop every step of the way. So we actually have the nicest person in the world on the webinar with us today, literally, our very own Shelley Medford. So today, she'll be walking us through a virtual enrollment, new enhancements with scope of appointment, and she's going to talk to us about the new certification I'm sure many of you have already seen concerning Office in a Box, and I'm sure you've had some questions about it. The best thing about this all is she is our compliance director, so she is not going to steer you wrong throughout this process. So before we get started, a few housekeeping rules. We're going to hold all questions until the end of the presentation. If you do have questions, just type in the box on the right-hand side of your computer or your screen, and we'll get to as many as we can at the conclusion of the presentation. So now, without any further delay, Miss Shelley Medford.
Good morning, and Brian, thank you so much for that warm introduction and welcome, guys. I'm so excited to have you here with the MyMFG virtual enrollment webinar. Really looking forward to diving into this. Thank you also, Brian, for housekeeping rules. Guys, I value your questions, so I will get to those towards the end. Before we dive right in, I'm going to give you a couple of my own housekeeping rules. So I'm going to take this fairly slowly just to make sure that you guys catch everything. I'm going to be really intentional. Normally I'm a quick speaker. I usually run through things pretty quickly, but I really want to make sure that you guys get this, that you see it. And I'm going to take my time and try to make sure that we all get this crystal clear, because we're in kind of a new climate, right, with everything and how it's all working. So I'm sure that you're quite familiar with the screen that you see in front of you, the dashboard here. There's been a lot of work done, so I'm sure just throughout the system you've been seeing some improvements, just some clean lines, everything just looking a little polished. So, with MyMFG, you guys know it's our proprietary software. I'm going to demo for you virtual enrollment today. We're going to go through the scope of appointment. So let's kick it off. Let's get started. We're going to go straight into the scope of appointment details. So if you're on MyMFG, you're showing your dashboard here, you want to go to clients and view client lists. So we have really done a lot of work. We heard you. We heard what you were saying with scope of appointment, and we completely agreed. So we pulled scope of appointments out of the enrollment process. They're still available within the enrollment process, but we've given you the option to do them outside of that process as well. So when you're on the client list, under the Clients tab, as you can see here, you have scope buttons on the left of your screen. So at any point, you can look through your client list, click complete scope from here, and then you can check that proverbial box, I guess. So just for our intents and purposes here, I'm going to pick a client here, Mr. Joe Smith. And when you're on the client profile, I'm sure you'll see some changes, some just cleaning up here as well. You can jump to any of the sections as we've talked about previously. One of the new buttons is scope of appointment history. Excuse me. And with the scope of appointment history, it will monitor, it'll keep track of all the scopes that you've completed for that client. So if you complete a scope, you need to be able to find that. It is located here within the client profile here. So we're gonna play around with this demo client. You guys know the drill and know how this works. So if I'm working with Mr. Smith and I want to complete a scope, The screen looks a little different, doesn't it, guys? So here's what I want to say. I'm going to rest here for a second. So the first question you're going to get is, how are you doing the scope of appointment? You have the option here of in-person or virtually, right? So you get to determine this. Now, if you're doing this within the enrollment process, the virtual scope option will illuminate for the carriers that virtual scopes are available for, okay? I'll go over that list of what carriers those are, the carriers that allow for virtual enrollment. But as you can see here, you have options. If you choose in person, which given our current situation, not likely, but if you choose that and you start the scope, you have the option to begin the scope here. The agent, you as the agent would start, and then the client would get to move forward there, right? So you have the option to do it that way. Otherwise, if I wanted to do it virtually, I would click on virtual, and then you would need to confirm the full name of the client and the email address that they have. It is imperative that you understand. It is so unbelievably important that you have to have an email address for the client in order to do the scope virtually. It has to get to them somehow via email. Got it? Want to make sure you understand this. So when you start the scope and you send the scope email, it says your virtual scope of appointment has been sent to you and your client. All right? So check your email, the email that's associated with your account, right? So if I check my email, I'm going to see that I have a scope, and I'll get it in just a second. We've got to wait on the World Wide Web. All right, so let me show you this. Look, I got a scope email. That only took a few seconds, right? So you're going to go to the review and sign. Now, it only pops open in another window like this when you're doing it virtually. It's not going to do this if you're doing it in person. It'll still pop up within the system. This is indicating that the signature isn't legally binding because I'm in a test environment. But when you are live, these signatures are legally binding, okay? So I'm in a test environment, which is what you're seeing. All right, you recognize the scope form, right? Everybody recognizes this? Okay, so type my name in here. Add a phone number. Right? So we got Mr. Joe Smith. You only have to fill in the things that are required, so remember that. This is going to be virtual. All right, so this is one of my favorite things about the new scope process, and I'm going to be a bit of a nerd here, so humor me. So it saves my signature options here because I have played with this a few hundred times. But you have several options. You can draw a scope with a mouse. Don't judge me. You can type, right? So I can type my name if I wanted to do that. You can upload an image. So some of you may keep an image of your signature on your computer for signing documents such as this. If you keep that and it gives you the options of the acceptable file formats, you can do that. Maximum file sizes, you can do it that way. Or my favorite little feature, which is you can take a picture of your signature. So if you have a client, this works the exact same way on the client side as well. So if you have a client who's very insistent upon their signature being put on this document officially, you know, as it would be in a scripted handwriting, I could write my signature on a piece of paper right now, and I normally don't demo this, but you know, we're going to do this. It's one of my favorite features. I would recommend that you do this on like an unlined piece of paper, but I have what I have right now. So if you take a photo of the signature that you just wrote, which I'm doing this while I'm on the phone with you, and then you email that photo exactly as you see it to this sign at Hello Sign, which I'm doing at this moment. If you guys use mobile devices, you know how to use email from your phone, I'm sure. But I'm just going to email this to Sign at Hello Sign, and the subject line is going to be whatever this number is. It's usually something random. It usually includes letters, so it's unique, it's secure. All right, so I'm doing this while I'm on the phone with you. I just sent it just now. So let's see what happens. I'm going to click continue. And it's going to be super ugly on this lined piece of paper. But I want you to see how amazing this is. I'm going to talk it up, and my internet's going to give me a hard time. Oh, yep. So there it is. I just did that. The closer that you take the photograph to your actual signature, the bigger it'll be. So it looks super tiny here. But it works, and it's a real signature. So plans that were represented during the meeting. So I can type. Right? And then you'll get this lovely green line that says you've completed all the required fields. Once you hit continue and you agree, it finalizes the document. So your client's going to get the same email, except the request that they're going to receive is going to ask them to complete the other side of the scope. So they can add their initials to the products and then simply sign. So anything that you've already filled in, they don't have to fill in, and they see immediately. Once that scope's completed, it's filed on the client profile. It's on record forever and ever and always, and you're in good shape there. So now that you've got a scope on the client, and I'm going to show it to you. So what this is going to do, guys, is once you have a scope on the client, it's going to check when you go to do an enrollment, it's going to check for a recent scope. I think it's going to check it for about 30 days. If I can get my mouse to cooperate with me, we'll be doing great. So, see? Today first. I've been playing with these. This is the last one I did. So it's going to say created until the other person completes it, and then it'll say that it's done. So once you get through the scope, and that scope, like I said, is pulled out of the enrollment process, but it is also available within the enrollment process. So you can access it anywhere you'd like. It's super important that you fill out as much of this client profile as possible for the enrollment. It's really going to help you a lot. Now, let me talk about virtual enrollments. We're going to jump into the virtual enrollment side. But before I do, I want to mention WellCare, write this down, is the only carrier that requires that you complete the scope through MyMFG. That's in person or virtually. It's absolutely the same. So just a reminder, WellCare requires that you do the scope through here. They're the only carrier that require it, but the option is available for all. So let's just say Joe Smith is the client that you're looking to enroll, and for whatever reason you decide that you want to do this enrollment virtually. There's a few things you're going to need. So the first thing you're going to need is Kynect. I know a lot of you have Kynect. We've been talking about Kynect. So let me just give you a quick breakdown. So if you have Kynect, it will be under the Clients tab, under Refer a Client. Do you see this? If I click on Kynect, it's going to pop a window here, and I'm going to tell you about the training in a second. If you do not currently have Kynect, you need to send an email requesting Kynect to mymfgsupport@messerfinancial.com. You see this? mymfgsupport@messerfinancial.com. All right? So that's where you would need to send the request. If you do not have Kynect and you have a client that you want to enroll virtually, the button that you get, I'm going to show you this. And I'm going to kind of go through this a couple times, guys, so just make sure that you're listening in and pay attention, because I want to show you a couple of things here. So say you have Humana, and Humana is a carrier that is available to enroll virtually. If you do not have Kynect, or you've never visited that Kynect page, once you have it, this virtual enrollment box will be grayed out. You will not be able to select it. And the reason is you don't have Kynect. If you don't have Kynect, you can't do virtual enrollments through MyMFG. It's just the way it works. So make sure if you don't have it that you get your request in. So let's just say with Mr. Joe here, and I can go any way I want. This is just the way I prefer to go. Let's just say with Mr. Joe here, I decide I'm going to do a virtual enrollment. If I have asked for Kynect, and Kynect is something I get, the first thing that's going to happen when you click on Kynect is you're going to come to the Kynect training page. The Kynect training page provides a 5-minute video narrated by yours truly, and you're going to have a time left to certify that's going to start at 7 days. You have 7 days from the day that you click on the Kynect button for the first time to complete the certification. It's a 10-question test. You have to make at least 80% on it to pass, and it's based off of the information that is in this video. So if you skip the video, the likelihood of you passing goes down. I'm telling you, I give real tests here. So the certification is serious. The reason I say that, and normally you guys know I'm pretty laid back, but the reason that we take this so seriously is because Medicare is serious business, and the carriers very much care that if you're going to do virtual enrollment, that you know how to do it. So if you pass this test, great, no problem. If you fail this test twice, because you get 2 attempts, if you fail it, there's going to be a conversation, and you'll get 1 additional attempt. If you fail it at that point, then virtual enrollment goes on hold for a while for you. So it's not a difficult test. Like I said, it's only 10 questions. Pay attention to the video. I know how you guys are. Turn on a video, zone out. So make sure you do that. For now, when you first get it, you have 7 days to do it. So if you want to skip the certification for now, you can skip it. It's going to open Kynect in a secondary window. Now, when you're having this conversation with your client, you're deciding that you're going to enroll, you're going to have a needs analysis or landscaping conversation with them. I recommend that you record the call of the landscaping. The reason I recommend this is because, generally speaking, when people get grievances, CTMs, complaints, it's around things like doctors, prescriptions, formularies, benefits. It's usually in the landscaping, the fact-finding, that those tend to occur. Somebody doesn't understand something or claims not to. So I recommend that you record it. I'll get into that in just a moment. So once you have Kynect, there's a few things you need to know. You have a phone number listed here. This is your number for Kynect. There are tons of ancillary features in here. I'm going to say this probably 1,000 times. So once you get into Kynect, it's really important for you to know that this is your phone number for Kynect. Kynect matters, right? So this is the number that your client's going to be speaking to you on. As you can see, there are lots of ancillary options here, lots of information and things within the Office in a Box or Kynect functionality. A lot of these features are phenomenal. I love them. They're great. They are not, and I'm going to repeat this probably 1,000 times, they're not required, nor are they necessary for virtual enrollment. When it comes to screen sharing, I would actually say in most cases, do not use it, okay? Don't use screen sharing for virtual enrollment. There are a few things that are requirements for virtual enrollment, and I want to make sure that you know exactly what those things are. So the first thing you're going to do to understand how virtual enrollment works is you have to be in contact with your client. Now, if you're doing landscaping and you want to record the landscaping conversation, you want to record the fact finding, you dial a number. Now, what this does is it's going to connect to your clients that are listed here. All right, so if you have your CRM portion of MyMFG thoroughly linked, and I mean you've filled out the profiles fairly robustly. The more you fill those out, the easier the enrollments are. Then that information will pop over here. So you can type a contact name or a phone number. And then when you can just dial it, you can type it there. You can use the dial pad if you just have ASMR things. It makes the old-fashioned sounds. And then when you're on the phone with them, if you're having the landscaping conversation, this is what you want to do. So I'm going to call a number here. And when your client answers, guys, when I use the term landscaping, if you have any questions about that, I mean, you're doing a review. You're going through a needs analysis. You're doing doctors and prescriptions and benefits and inpatient hospitals and MOOPs and all of those things. Like you're going through the carriers available and whatnot. So anyway, once your client answers the call here, you're going to press record. This record button is the most important little red button that you have access to. Once you're recording this call, it's on your system. This is what's important. So I recommend that if you're on the phone with your client and you're doing a needs analysis, that you record it. You can do that on an outbound call. You can call them and talk about all of those things after you've completed a scope. All right? When it comes down to doing the actual enrollment, they have to call you. So we'll talk about it in a second. So let's just say I'm on the phone with this person, right? We're recording. I'm on the phone with Joe Smith. It's recording. We're having this conversation. We're talking about what they need, talking about doctors, talking about prescriptions, right? It's really important that you verbally kind of go over all of the details of what you're discussing. So let's just say we're comparing a couple plans. We're comparing the Humana, the WellCare plan, maybe even an Aetna. We'll throw an Aetna in here. You go to compare the plans, right? You're having a conversation. You're talking about the benefits. You're talking about out-of-pocket, maximums. You're talking about the prescriptions and what tiers they're on, the estimated monthly cost of those. All right, so we're going to get down here to the bottom. You see these plan documents? These things are extremely important. So if you're doing a virtual enrollment, it's different than in person, right? In person, you normally have the enrollment book. You have all of the kind of documentation you need. You have summary benefits. You have EOCs. You have star ratings. You have all of that stuff with you. In order to do a virtual enrollment, this is the second thing that's super important. You have to provide the plan documentation for the plan you are going to enroll the client in. And you have to give them the plan documentation before you complete the enrollment. You can email it to them, you can snail mail it, you can send it over a secure file transmission. I don't care how you get it to them as long as it's in their hands or on their screen. And I don't mean by screen sharing it. You can't give it to them virtually by sharing what you have from your side. They have to be able to open it on their side. I know I'm emphasizing and putting a lot of stress on that because the carriers really care about how this happens. However you obtain the plan documentation, it doesn't have to come from here. It can come from the carrier specifically. You may not have, some carriers don't share everything through this, as you can see here. So you might have more information here than you do elsewhere. If you're going to review it, if it's something that's of relevance to the plan, you guys are the experts. You know what those documents are. Make sure they have it, especially the summary of benefits, right? So let's just say I'm on the phone, I've done all this. I'm going to hang up because this is a test and that person might care that I have them on record forever. But so let's just say I'm still having that conversation, right? Well, the minute we decide that we're going to pick a plan and we're going to enroll, the person that you're talking to here has to call you. The only portion of the call that has to be recorded, that is required to be recorded, is the actual enrollment, okay? So it's really important. You guys are field agents. You're out there, generally speaking in the field. I'm being very slow on purpose. This doesn't really take this long, okay? So you have them call you at this number, right? Make sure you have a microphone or a headset or something so you can actually communicate with them. And then you pick a plan. You proceed through enrollment, right? You're confirming, you're attesting that you're ready to sell. Now, again, you have this option that shows up here, right, to do the scope. If you've already completed the scope, just hit skip scope. Go to the in-person and skip scope. The system's going to look. They're going to verify that you have the scope on file for that person. So you don't need to panic if you've already done it. Now, as you can see, this has been cleaned up substantially. You know where you are. All right, so here's what's important. I worked really hard, and the rest of the Messer team worked super hard to make sure that you guys didn't have to have a script to go through this with any of the carriers. All right, you don't have a script. There is no script. You're not a telephonic agent. All right, you are a field agent. You know how to communicate with your client. So when you're going through this, make sure that verbally on the phone call, they call you, ring, ring. Hi, Mr. Smith. This is Shelley Medford, your agent. Just want to let you know that you're on a monitored and recorded call, or not monitored, but a recorded call. Want to make sure that we're going to start your enrollment on the Aetna Medicare Premier Plan, H5521-140. You don't have to go that far. That's just make sure they know what plan they're signing up for. We're just going to confirm some personal information. So your date of birth is this, your phone number is this, and you want them to say yes. You want them to affirm what you're saying. All right, so you're saying your address is blah, 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 blah in South Carolina. Your Medicare number is this. Great, perfect. Want to make sure we get the right provider for you. Am I making sense, guys? Like it's not rocket science. You're not trying to be crazy. You're just verbalizing what you're already doing. You're already doing these things. You do this stuff in your sleep. I know. So you save and continue. You talk about the enrollment types. If you're doing a special needs plan, if you're doing an SEP, you want to talk about the SEP and the reason. The reason you're verbally reviewing all of this on that recorded line when they call you back, when they call in to you and you're pressing record and you're going through all of this, the reason you want to go through it this way is so if there's ever a question, right? I'm sure we've all heard it. Well, I didn't understand the plan I was enrolling in, or, they didn't verify that my doctors. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And you have the recording to prove it. So if you're doing an SEP, right, you're picking the SEP election date, you're talking about all of these things. You don't have to go through it word by word by word by word, and you don't have to sound like a recording. Sound like yourself. The reason that people enroll with you is because of who you are and the way that you do business, right? So you ask these questions. You may already know the answers to them, but just make sure that you're doing it to stay compliant, right? If it's a $0 plan, you know how to communicate that and that you're just moving forward. Okay, so this is the next super important part. So if you're doing MAPD plans, every one of the carriers has this legal section, this compliance section. If you're doing an enrollment for an MAPD plan, please read this. It'll take you very little time. Just make sure that you are conveying all of the information that they need to have. You don't have to read this entire thing. Some of this stuff is for PDP plans or for PFFS plans. You don't have to go through all of that. Just make sure that they know what they're signing up for, right? Power of attorney, signature. Here we go. So you are technically typing their signature, right? In a virtual enrollment, you are typing their signature. What's important for you to understand with this is that they are attesting to enrolling. So the way that I would handle this as an agent is I would say, okay, Mr. Smith, thank you. We've gotten through all of the required information here to get you ready. I just want to make sure that you know that you're enrolling into the Aetna Medicare Premier Plan H5521-140. The premium amount is $0. It's an MAPD plan. Do you agree to enroll in this plan? And they say yes, and that is their signature. Right? Does that make sense? Make sure they don't have any special preferences for language or alternate formats. You verify your writing number. You don't have to say anything about that. If you do decide to complete a scope for another carrier in an alternate format, so say you do a telephonic scope through some of the carriers who offer that, or you somehow did a paper scope or whatnot. If there's a scope of appointment ID number, add this here. That information will transmit to the carrier, and then they will be able to match the enrollment with the scope. So it saves you a whole lot of time, a whole lot of trouble. So once you submit it, you're going to get this lovely pop-up, right? And you are attesting, you are agreeing to this, so that you've completed the scope, that you've provided all the required plan documentation, that you've conducted a compliant sales presentation, including but not limited to recited all required disclaimers to the client. So, in addition to the above, if the interaction with the client is not virtual, is virtual and not face-to-face, you already have permission to contact that client. You've delivered all the sales materials prior to the presentation of that plan. You've completed the enrollment application in conjunction with the inbound phone call, and you've recorded the enrollment with the client, okay? Those are the 4 things that you're attesting to if you're doing this virtually. Once you hit agree, you've seen this, congratulations. It's submitted. It works. The enrollment form really doesn't change. The only thing that's different is the scope process in terms of that. And instead of sitting down and having the conversation with someone face-to-face, you're doing it here. Now, once you've completed the enrollment, you can come over here, you can end the call, and then if you go to your call history, that call, as you can see, is here, and the recording is listed right beside it, right? So that recording is here forever and ever, at least the minimum of the 10 years, right? You can play that recording, you can download it, you can do whatever you want except for delete it. Don't delete it because you may need it one day, okay? The call recording's also listed here in a separate call recording section. So you'll always have access to that if you need it. So if you ever get a complaint or a grievance, you can go back and you can say adamantly, you know, here's the recording, here's the date that we had the conversation, here's the scope. And unless you didn't do the things that you attested to doing, then you should be cleared of that. So a couple things I'm going to reemphasize. Screen sharing is not for sharing plan documentation, period, end of story. If you want to review the plan documentation with them on a video call or screen share, that's your prerogative, but you have to deliver the plan documentation to them prior to the enrollment in a way that they can access it themselves. You have to record the enrollment via an inbound call to this number, whatever your number is, because you'll have your own. That is a requirement. You have to get the scope, and you have to make sure that you are doing a compliant sales presentation, right? So those are the big things. The video, the Kynect video talks all about this. You can watch it as many times as you want to. Under the support and training tab, we have the demo here, as well as some of the refreshers and other webinars and training videos that we've done. A lot of you guys have been on this. It's really straightforward. That video for Kynect is 5 minutes, so it's pretty direct and to the point, and isn't as much of a conversation as it is a demonstration. So you have access to seeing that there. I want to just make sure that you understand what carriers are available for virtual enrollment. We've worked really hard to get you guys as many carriers as possible, and we're still working with a couple of big ones to see what we can do. But right now, for virtual enrollment, you have Aetna, Humana, HTA, Blue Cross North, Blue Cross South, and WellCare. We landed WellCare for virtual enrollment this week. I have 2 carriers who are still reviewing, and I'm very, very close to landing them. One of those, hopefully, is Cigna HealthSpring. We don't have Cigna yet, but they're in the final stages of compliance review, so hopefully we'll get them. And then we're working on a couple of others. So stay tuned. You get announcements pretty quickly. So that's virtual enrollment in a nutshell. It's pretty simple. If you don't have Kynect, email the support box requesting it. Be patient because we're turning them on as quickly as possible. You know, if you have enrollment buttons that are grayed out, you know how you need to deal with that from a support standpoint. Make sure that you're good to go, guys. We want to make sure that we take care of this for you. So I'm going to open up things for questions, and hopefully I can address everything. So give me just a moment. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, ma'am. You sound good.
Perfect. So list of carriers one more time because I've gotten a couple questions on it. Aetna, Humana, HTA, WellCare, Blue Cross, North Carolina, Blue Cross Blue Shield, South Carolina for virtual enrollment on the Medicare side. All right, so let me check the questions. Okay, so on the scope of appointment, there are markers that indicate what the client needs to fill out. So I can show you that via, if I can click on the right thing, will be great. So if we complete the scope, let me just show it to you in person so you can see the client side. So give me just a second and I'll show you this. Don't you wish your handwriting looked like that? I know I do. All right, so I'm just going to blaze through this really quickly so I can show you the client side. The reason I couldn't show you the client side is because we did it virtually, so it went to the client. Let's just say walk in here. I'm going to make this so much easier so you guys don't have to put up with all of that. Let's just say Aetna. All right, so that goes green, right? Hit agree. In person, this is done. On the client side, do you see where it says click to initial? So they would click it, and they can do the same thing. They can draw it in, they can type it, they can upload the image. Insert everywhere is one of the options. So there you go. And it has this button that'll take you to the next thing if you'd like to do that. You don't really have to. Save the signature, continue, agree. Look, you're done. So that's the client side. It's really simple. Okay, can the video be watched more than once before the test? The Kynect video, yes, absolutely, it can be. You can watch it as many times as you want to. You can watch it 100 times just to make sure that you feel better. Let's see. Documents available for Blue Cross Blue Shield plans. If they populate here, that's great. If they don't, I would go directly to the carrier to get them. The Kynect does not automatically start recording. You need to press record. It's imperative that you do that. You may not want all of your conversations recorded, but you have the option. You can have the client call you from the start and record the entire call, landscape and sale all at once. That's completely your call. I think that's wonderful. If that's how you want to proceed with it, it's fantastic. Yes, you only have to record at the, and one of the other questions I'm getting is you do not have to record at the, you only have to record the enrollment section. You don't have to do it at the needs analysis if you don't want to. I'm telling you from a compliance perspective, it's extremely beneficial for you to do so because generally speaking, when there's a misunderstanding, that's where it occurs. And yes, for those of you who have experienced it, no more DocuSign, no more logging into accounts. It's not there. You don't have to do it. Let's see. You cannot send email through Kynect. The question I got was, can you send an email through Kynect? No, but you do have a store and share option, and you can request files. So you can request files from someone and play with this. I'm going to work on doing a more thorough, just ancillary office in the box features. But you can definitely do that. You can create a link basically, and you can send that to a client, and then they can drop files in there, or you can send files this way. So if you want to share a file, type a name, an email, or a phone number, and then select the files. You can do it that way, and this is a secure method, so that's great. I've gotten a couple questions for how you get Kynect, guys. Remember, you send the email to MyMFG support at mesterfinancial.com and request it if you don't already have it. Always double check first. Let's see. You don't have to have a headset. You do have to, your microphone is generally built into your computer, So as long as when you get Kynect, you allow it to connect to your microphone, then you should be fine to use it that way. It's not my personal preference, and I would recommend at least at some point maybe a headset. If you have a wireless headset that you use with your phone, you can pair it via Bluetooth to your computer if it's newer, but that's all techie stuff. So get someone who's really techie to help you with that. If your client has a family member with them to help with the computer, okay, so if your client is elderly and struggles with technology, it's not a problem to have someone there to help them open an email or to gain access to something. But the client has to be the one to thoroughly understand what's going on. They have to be able to understand the documents that you're presenting to them and understand the plan. Because remember, guys, at the end of the day, compliance for Medicare is to protect the client. Okay, it's not to cause you guys more chaos or pain. You don't need to sign up for HelloSign at all. It's already there. You don't have to do anything. It's just in MyMFG. Let's see. You get one phone number assigned to you in Kynect, and that is your phone number. Period. End of story. You don't get another one. It doesn't change every time you log in. It's the same. The fax option in Kynect is available. All you have to do is set up the account, right? You can use an existing number, and it will create all of that for you. So it's really simple, and it works beautifully. Can you take a picture of a paper scope and upload it into MyMFG? Yes, you can. So for those of you who are interested, if you have a client and you have documents that you want to save for them, right? Let's just go on down here. Activity history is your best friend that you didn't know you had. You can add a new activity. You can upload a file. That file can be anything. Select the subject. As long as it's not bigger than 30 megabytes, you are good. So you can upload, take a picture of the scope. Yep. So I'm really happy that you guys are excited about this. We want to make sure that you can move forward in a virtual world. These things are not temporary, guys. Just so you know, these approvals are not temporary. They are, we've gotten approval. It's not just because of the climate we're in. It's not just because of what we're dealing with. We have these approvals solidly from the carriers. My only recommendation when you're recording the call, regardless of if you decide to use the Office in a Box feature outside of the Medicare portion, is you have to let your client know that they're being recorded, and they have to agree to be recorded. That's with anything. So anytime they call in or you call them, you just say, hey, we're on a recorded line. Is that okay? Yes. If they say yes, you're good. All right, let's see. Yep, I mean, I think that's about all the questions I've got, guys. If you have anything else, let me know. If not, we're gonna call this done.
Excellent. Shelley, thank you so much for going through all of that. I know that anytime that we have something new, even though MyMFG has been around for a while, but a lot of folks are just getting used to Kynect. And with all the updates and everything, we appreciate you coming on. I know that you've probably gone through this a few times, but we appreciate it because it helps all of us out. So thank you once again. Once again, I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. Hopefully you learned something that's going to help you as far as while you're using Kynect and doing your virtual enrollments. I hope that you find value as far as the changes for the scope of appointment, which is really great. If you do have any questions at all, feel free to go ahead and reach out. You can actually email mfgmarketing@messerfinancial.com. And once again, like Shelley said, if you do not have the Kynect feature right now, go ahead and email MyMFG support@messerfinancial.com. and we can go ahead and get you set up with that. We do want to be sure that you do have carriers, at least two carriers that you are ready to sell with, so you can utilize that feature. Also, take a few moments to check out our events calendar at messerfinancial.com. We will be having webinar workshops scheduled throughout the year with valuable information just like this. But once again, we want to thank you all for joining us this morning, and make sure that you take care of yourselves and everyone around you. Have a great day.